Gentle people, everybody put your phone on silent or off so that we have no interruptions to the exciting match that is going to unfold in a few minutes. Right. What's the putting it to work? All right, Wesley, I'm sorry. Sorry about that little false start. Good morning again, for those of you joining us from the first match. But a warm welcome to those of you just joining us for this match in the fifth staging of the public sector debate competition. We're delighted to have you, our company, for this milestone event, and especially to those who have stayed with us on social media for the first match and you're now back for the second match. You're in for no less a treat. I'm Aniki Clark, communication lead in the TIU, but if you're just joining us, you missed a most exciting match between the Cannabis Licensing Authority and the Water Resources Authority. And in that match, the Water Resources Authority triumphed, but it's not over for the Cannabis Licensing Authority because they still have one more match to play in this round, and from that, we will determine the teams that advance to the next round. Remember, you can keep abreast of the matches by following us on social media at TIU_Jamaica on Instagram and X, and TIU Jamaica on Facebook. Right, so we have two lovely teams continuing the action, almost evenly balanced, but you know, they flip the script on one side. So we have two males and a female, and two females and a male. That's nice, isn't it? So we have the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs and Agro-Investment Corporation. We also want to recognize their support team from the Agro-Invest Corporation, led by Tiffany Turnbull, who is their Senior Director of HRM&D and A. And on Team Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, led by Jamaica Turnbull. I'm sorry, Jamie Shevans. Forgive me, Jamie Shevans. She's a Principal Director for Social Justice. Let's hear it for her as well. Right, so these two teams will be debating the Moot. Be it resolved that public sector institutions should favor innovation and creativity over institutional experience, right? You know what they're asking, right? Yes? Big debate this. Big debate this, right? All right, so we want to meet the teams, starting with Team Proposition, the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Team, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Owen Honeygun. I'm the first. Hi, I'm Owen Honeygun, first speaker.
Shots fired when Owen introduced himself.
Good morning, I'm Claudia Floyd, second speaker.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Clayton Williams, third speaker.
Thank you very much. Team Proposition, and we now invite Team Opposition, Agro-Investment Corporation, to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Maria Davis, the first speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Donovan Leon, second speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Miki Rule, third speaker.
Great, so we've met the debaters. It's now time to meet our judges, who will have the unenviable task of judging this match. Judges, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I am Robin Thomas Matthews, and I will be the chair judge for this round.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Degan Nelson. I'll be serving as a wing adjudicator. All the best.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jerome Reynolds, and I'll be serving as one of your wing adjudicators, and all the best.
Thank you. And our the adjudicators are from our partners, the Jamaican Association for Debating and Empowerment. The teams are familiar with the rules, so I won't go through them, but the judges will guide them. At this point, it's up for me to say good luck, teams, and I will see you during the break.
All right, teams, and welcome. You're vying to see who will be advancing on 3 points and who will be fighting very hard in the next round to secure the 3 points then. All right? And so the debate is going to be governed by the Jade parliamentary format. The format goes as follows. First speakers, you will have 7 minutes to present your case. Second speakers, 6 minutes. And the third and final speakers, you'll have 5 minutes to present your substantives. It's important to note that the first and last minute of each speech is considered protected time, in which no points of information will be allowed. Outside of protected time, points of information are not only allowed, but we absolutely encourage them. Now, between the first set of speakers and the second set of speakers, you're going to have your cross-examination period. Importantly, I'll tell you more about the cross-examination period when we get to that part of the debate. You will hear your time signals via the ding of a bell. The first ding means that you've entered, or rather exited your first period of protected time. Your second ding is going to mean that you're in your last minute of your speech. Then you will hear the bell ding twice. That means that you've used up all of your allocated time, but we give you a 15-second grace period. At the end of that 15-second grace period, you're going to hear the bell ding continuously. That means that the judges are no longer listening and you should yield the floor. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, the motion, rather the moot before us reads, be it resolved that the public sector should favor innovation and creativity over institutional experience. It is my honor and privilege to call this debate to order, and I invite the first speaker from the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Dwayne Hunnigan, to take the stage. Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, members of the adjudicating panel, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today we stand at a defining crossroads in Jamaica's development. Our nation finds itself grappling with the weight of inherited systems while facing the urgency of an unpredictable future. As a result, Jamaica can no longer afford the luxury of slow incremental change. It is for this reason, Mr. Speaker, that we stand firmly in support of the Moot, be it resolved that public sector institutions should favor innovation and creativity over institutional experience. Mr. Speaker, this debate is not about whether institutional experience has value. It does. The question is whether it is sufficient. And the evidence shows that when experience is prioritized over innovation, systems maintain themselves rather than improve. As first speaker for side proposition, I will define our key terms and outline the critical challenges facing Jamaica's public sector necessitating this paradigm shift. Our second speaker will highlight the practical advantages of prioritizing innovation in public sector reform. And our third speaker will synthesize the clashes in this debate and tell us why the proposition's approach offers the most effective path for Jamaica's development. Mr. Speaker, for clarity, we define the key terms of this moot as follows. Public sector institutions refers to ministries, departments, and agencies responsible for delivering services and managing public resources. To favor in this debate is synonymous with prioritize, which is to designate something as more important than another. Innovation, as defined by UNESCO, is a process of improving or implementing new ideas, methods, or products to solve problems or enhance efficiency, while creativity refers to the generation of those unique and new ideas. And finally, institutional experience refers to the knowledge embedded in established procedures and organizational functions, both formal and informal ways of doing things. In restating the Moot, we are arguing that ministries, departments, and agencies should prioritize the creation and implementation of new and unique ideas over reliance on the knowledge of established procedures and historical ways of doing things. That, Mr. Speaker, makes our burden very clear. However, the opposition must prove that institutional experience alone is sufficient to deliver meaningful improvement even in a rapidly changing world. Ironically, Mr. Speaker, our opponents themselves are products of innovation, making their defense of institutional experience contradictory. But I digress. Now for my first point. Mr. Speaker, institutional experience alone limits performance. Jamaica's public sector must be anchored in innovation as the true driver of efficiency and progress. The performance of Jamaica's public sector institutions has long been hindered by inefficiencies that stem from an over-reliance on institutional experience, which we admit has value, but becomes limiting when institutions fail to adapt to modern challenges. The evidence, not at this time, the evidence proves this. The Auditor General identified persistent duplication and weak delivery in social programs despite multiple reform efforts, showing that existing systems are not improving over time, even at the highest levels of leadership. This reality is acknowledged. Both Prime Minister Andrew Holness and Minister of Finance Favour Williams have highlighted how outdated, heavily bureaucratic systems continue to hinder growth and innovation across the public sector. Yet, Mr. Speaker, this acknowledgement has not translated into transformation. Why? Because our institutions have not sufficiently prioritized innovation to fundamentally change how they operate. And where it is prioritized, the results are quite clear. At agencies like the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, implementing digital systems have reduced processing times and improved customer access, demonstrating how innovation directly improves service delivery. I am sure, Mr. Speaker, we can all remember a time when walking into PICA to apply for a passport would be a whole day thing. Now, because of innovation, you can be in and out of PICA within 1 hour. Mr. Speaker, what we see with PICA is not what some institutions should be doing. It is what all public institutions must be doing. Mr. Speaker, in a rapidly changing world, institutional experience alone cannot keep Jamaica's public sector adaptive. Only creativity and innovation can. I invite us to think for a moment about all the different things that are happening in the world right now. We're talking about rapid digital transformation, global economic uncertainty, and climate-related shocks. Relying, Mr. Speaker, on experience alone to navigate these challenges, challenges that are new, challenges that are ambiguous, is ultimately unsustainable. Even under crisis conditions like COVID-19, the public sector had to rely on innovation, rapid digital adoption, and remote service delivery to remain functional. This shows that when tested, experience alone was not enough. Experience may help us to anticipate familiar or recurring risks, but it is far less effective at anticipating new and emerging risks or at redesigning systems before those risks materialize. I'll take your point in a moment. Mr. Speaker, if there is any indication of how urgently Jamaica must take innovation seriously, it is our performance on the Global Innovation Index. Jamaica currently ranks 83rd out of 139 economies, falling from 72nd in 2020. That is not progress. That is regression. More concerning is that our performance is ranked 117th out of 139 economies where knowledge and technology outputs are concerned, and 115 where market sophistication is concerned. These are not just statistics, Mr. Speaker. These are systems. These are signals, rather, of systematic underperformance. Take your point. Oh, okay. All right. Let me remind you that behind every delayed service, Every inefficient process and every outdated system is a Jamaican waiting longer, paying more, and receiving less. In closing, Mr. Speaker, this debate is not about dismissing experience. It is about recognizing its limits. Experience maintains systems, but innovation improves them. And in a Jamaica facing complex and changing challenges, only innovation can deliver real, sustained public sector effectiveness. And for that reason, we strongly support the Moot. Thank you.
And thank you very much. At this point in time, we invite the first speaker from the Agro-Invest Corporation to open the case for side opposition. That speaker, Maria Davis.
Mr. Speaker, honorable adjudicators, esteemed opponents, and members of the audience, good morning. Be it resolved that public sector institutions should favor innovation and creativity over institutional experience. The Agro-Investment Corporation rises firmly against this motion, and we do so not out of fear of change, but out of respect for consequence. Imagine waking up tomorrow to a national address from the Most Honorable Dr. Andrew Holness, where he says, effective immediately. All existing policies, procedures, and institutional frameworks are now null and void. We will rebuild our public sector from scratch, guided only by creativity and innovation. No established procedures in hospitals, no law and order in the justice system, no structured practices, just raw, untested innovation and creativity. Not at this time. Boy, we don't have no behavior, total disorder. Let's not cross that border. Because this we say, Mr. Speaker, the mic seems to not be working, is what would happen without prioritizing institutional experience, pure chaos and mayhem. The opposing team therefore rejects the motion and contends that institutional experience must remain the primary foundation of public sector operations, with innovation and creativity serving as complementary, not superior elements. As the first speaker, I will provide key definitions to frame the debate and address the first of three arguments in support of our stance. Our second speaker will build on these key arguments by demonstrating how prioritizing innovation and creativity over experience can weaken stability, disrupt continuity, and expose public resources to mismanagement. Our third speaker will address the practical implications, rebut the arguments presented by the proposition, and show why a balanced approach led by institutional experience is the most sustainable model for the public sector. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to prefer the proper definitions of institutional experience, also known as institutional knowledge. According to James P. Walsh and Gerardo Ong-Song, institutional experience is the accumulated information from an organization's history that can be brought to bear on present decisions. It captures the unique expertise and insights that have developed over time through individuals, structures, and systems. We say it is the foundation for decision-making, problem-solving, and innovation and creativity. Not at this time. I would also like to differ slightly the definition of creativity and innovation. We say that these are commonly measured by the adoption of digital technology. The innovation agenda is therefore equated to the digital agenda. Further, Mr. Speaker, a systematic literature review of 87 peer-reviewed articles published between 2004 and 2023 in the Scopus database revealed that technology adoption is the innovation process in the public sector, not a mere tool within it. Now that we have a better understanding of what this moot is really about, let me take you through our first argument. Institutional experience is the prerequisite for meaningful innovation and creativity. Without it, there will be governance failure. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you now to open your minds. Think of institutional experience not as an obstacle to innovation, but rather consider it as its only reliable engine. Not at this time developing my argument. Where institutional experience is absent, innovation becomes a vector for governance failure, wasting public resources, eroding accountability, and diminishing the public value that public institutions exist to create. The basis of this argument does not seek to deny the value of innovation and creativity. Rather, it insists on its proper sequencing. An innovation-first approach not informed by institutional knowledge leads to critical errors. It mistakes bureaucratic caution for obstruction. It designs solutions for the ideal citizen rather than the real one, and it interprets safeguards as inefficiencies to be disrupted. The OECD's analysis of why public sector innovation fails is instructive. Across 137 cases from 37 countries, the organization found that innovation without institutional direction produces a carte blanche culture that results in, and I quote, a lack of focus related to the envisaged outcomes, the areas of work, and process itself. Mr. Speaker, the lesson drawn here is precise. Innovation is not an end itself. It needs structure and direction, and that structure and direction can only come from one source: institutional experience. Not at this time. The Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, in the US, represents perhaps the most vivid and consequential illustration of our point. DOGE was formed in 2025 by slashing federal regulations, restructuring federal agencies, and innovating with information technology and creativity. It was meant to save dollars, billions of dollars in government contracts, but in reality, it failed due to unrealistic ambitions. DOGE bypassed accountability systems and dismantled established practices only to crumble when tested. Mr. Speaker, let us be clear about this. What this debate is truly asking, it is asking whether government should gamble with citizens' lives in the name of novelty. The opposition's answer to this is an unequivocal no. I thank you.
And thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a very interesting and exciting part of the debate. We call it the cross-examination period. In this segment, we will see opposition posing 3 questions to the team in proposition. Each question is limited to 10 seconds, and each answer is limited to 45 seconds. It's important to note that for the team who's asking the question, only one person may do so at a time. For the team answering the question, the entire team can chime in to provide a complete and comprehensive answer to that question, as long as it fits within that 45-second window. Once the 3 questions from opposition have been asked and answered, we will invite team proposition to do the same. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this cross-examination period going. We invite the first question from Team Agro-Invest Corporation.
Morning again. Team opposition would like to propose a question. How, in a world of global innovation, how do you define or determine which one is applicable to the public service without institutional experience? So the question is, how do you apply from the lot of innovations that exist? How do you define or how do you determine which one can be adopted in a public service without institutional experience?
We have argued quite clearly that the replacement or the devaluing of institutional experience is not the position we're taking. Instead, what we're arguing is that within the Jamaican context, institutional experience has not led to the type of changes, the type of reform that the public sector needs. And that is why we're saying that going forward, in the face of the challenges that the world is now facing, Jamaica needs to prioritize innovation and creativity, because those are the engines for change.
How can you manage the risks associated with innovation and creativity without taking from institutional knowledge and experience?
Well, the GOJ has already invested heavily in creating the right environment to undertake innovation and creativity. That is why we're seeing where in every single MDA there is now an enterprise risk management team. Every single MDA has a strategic planning and performance management team. So the capacity is in place for innovation and creativity to take place. What is happening is that public sector institutions are not taking advantage of that capacity.
Thank you, Ben. How do you ensure that the new innovative drives they are compatible with legacy systems?
Compatibility with legacy systems?
Yes.
If legacy systems are failing, why should we care about compatibility? What we're seeing is that within the public sector institutions are failing, and we only see pockets of innovation working for those who have prioritized creativity and innovation over institutional experience. So if legacy programs and projects are a reflection of failure, we cannot even begin to consider keeping them.
Then may I ask you, the team, to also consider? We'll
save that one for the next period of cross. At this point in time, we invite the 3 questions from the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If experience is the key driver of effectiveness, as you have claimed, why has Jamaica required 4 major public sector reform programs since the 1980s?
Thank you for the question. So at each stage of development, you realize that as a developing state, the conditions for which we have to respond to are always changing. And so what would have started off at in our first decade would have changed then. It's the institutional experience that has guided the adoption, has not allowed us to burst our fiscal seams by chasing every innovation.
If the opposition is relying primarily on institutional experience, what specific mechanism do they propose to fix long-standing inefficiencies that experience has not resolved?
Thank you for the question. So, institutional experience has not been a challenge per se in solving the challenges. What has happened is a matter of capacity. So, we are still doing the same services as done long time before, but there's more demand for the services, and where natural capacity arises, that's where the innovation takes place. So it still requires institutional experience to guide the application of innovation and creativity in the public service.
Our final question is the opposition's position that institutional experience should be prioritized even in situations where existing systems are clearly inefficient or outdated?
All right. In these systems that we see issues that arise, it would take a person who has institutional experience to tell them what needs to be done or what needs to be fixed, as they would have been there over the time to see where the innovation is needed and not just throw innovation in because it's the order of the day right now.
All right, thank you very much for that first period of cross-examination, teams. At this point in time, we invite the second speaker from the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Claudia Powell. Make her welcome.
Mr. Speaker, esteemed opponents, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me be clear from the outset. Experience built the system, but innovation and creativity are what is fixing it. This is not a debate about whether experience matters. We all agree that it does. Experience gives us structure, memory, and stability. But the real question before us is far more critical. Is experience alone enough to move Jamaica forward in a rapidly changing world? And the answer is an unequivocal no. Jamaica is not struggling because we lack experience. We struggle where we have failed to prioritize and scale innovation and creativity. And in a debate like this, No one that can inform real policy direction. We must not be guided by comfort. We must be guided by what delivers results for the people. Now, Mr. Speaker, the opposition wants us to believe that experience prevents mistakes. But let us be clear. The greater risk to any public institution today is not innovation. It is refusing to adapt while problems continue to grow. Because what they call stability too often becomes stagnation. So I ask them directly, where is the evidence that experience on its own has transformed failing systems at scale? Mr. Speaker, let us move from theory to reality. In Jamaica, we have seen the power of innovation and creativity through the work of the Tax Administration Jamaica, which introduced its e-services platform, allowing taxpayers to file returns and make payments online, including registration and licensing vehicle online. I have that experience. I traveled overseas recently and forgot to register my vehicle. And I was able to do it so that when I come back, I was able to drive as I came out the airport. According to reports from the Jamaica Information Service and the Ministry of Finance and Public Service, over 90% of GCT returns are now filed electronically, with compliance rate exceeding 85%. But, Mr. Speaker, this is not just data. This is a small business owner who no longer has to lose a day's income just to meet tax obligations. This is dignity being restored in public service delivery. Innovation and creativity did not just improve the system, it removed inefficiency. Because if experience alone were enough, those lines would still exist. We see the same transformation in Jamaica Constabulary Force, where electronic ticketing has increased accuracy, reduced disputes, and strengthened accountability. But more importantly, it has built trust. Citizens are no longer questioning the fairness of the process. They are seeing consistency and transparency, and that is the core purpose of any public institution. Mr. Speaker, systems do not fail of innovation. They fail because innovation is delayed and creativity is suppressed. Even our most traditional institutions tell the same story. The Court Administration Division introduced digital case management systems and virtual hearings, and this was not just a temporary response to crisis. It proved something far more important. Innovation works, and it promotes stability when institutionalized. Because this is not just about systems, it is about people. The reduction in case backlog, where cases shows being discharged by the courts at a faster rate. This is about the citizen in a rural parish who no longer has to travel long distance for a simple court appearance. This is about a justice system that becomes more accessible, more efficient, and more responsive. The courts did not abandon experience. They modernized it through creativity and innovation. Mr. Speaker, this is not just a Jamaican reality. Across the world, countries that prioritize innovation consistently outperform those that rely only on institutional memory. Competitiveness today is not driven by how long systems have existed, but how quickly they adapt. And while investment depends on many factors, efficient systems reduce investor risk. A country where processes are faster, clearer, and more predictable is a country that attracts opportunity. Innovation is not the only driver of investment, but it is a critical one. So let us be absolutely clear about the real issue in this debate. This is not experience versus innovation and creativity. This is stagnation versus progress. Because experience without creative innovations does not improve systems. It preserves them, even when they are failing. Mr. Speaker, when you weigh impact on citizens, when you weigh institutional performance, and when you weigh future readiness, the proposition clearly delivers greater value. Because where creativity and innovation exist, systems improve, and where it does not, inefficiencies remain. Experience explains the past. Innovation secures the future. The opposition is asking you to be complacent. We are asking you to be forward-thinking and effective. We're not dismissing experience. We are ensuring it does not limit progress. A system that only values experience will repeat itself. But a system that prioritizes innovation and creativity will transform itself. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica cannot afford to be governed by memory when it must compete through imagination. We choose progress. We choose impact. We choose transformation, and for that reason, public sector institutions must favor innovation and creativity over institutional experience. I rest our case.
Ladies and gentlemen, to extend the case for side opposition, we invite their second speaker, Donovan Leon.
Honorable judges, worthy opponents, and members of the audience, including those online, good day. We, the opposition, would like to first rebut the argument with institutional experience being focused at the individual level. If our worthy opponents would have recalled the definition, it expanded to accumulated knowledge, which includes systems and procedures. And therefore, the narrowed approach of thinking about the individual is already misaligned. Notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, my argument is that public institutions thrive on stability. Mr. Speaker, the public sector institution depends on institutional experience to maintain operational smoothness. This is required for effective service delivery. Conversely, innovation inherently destabilizes existing systems and introduces disruptions which are often accompanied by a high-risk change process. Now, the opposition would have you believe that we are against the idea of innovation. But what we are saying that the contrast of innovation and creativity being favored over institutional experience can be likened to the Jamaican proverb, new broom sweep clean, but old broom no corner. Ladies and gentlemen, public sector institutions manage critical infrastructure, food security, social welfare, and economic investments inter alia. Whilst we recognize that changes to the external environment will require public institutions to leverage innovative solutions, it is the institutional experience that gauges adoption. Dunleavy et al. 2006 found that many public sector reforms fail because innovation is introduced without sufficient administrative capacity. The World Bank 2020 further emphasizes that strong institutional experience must come before successful innovation. Unlike private enterprises, which can absorb failure within the market, public institutions operate under fundamentally different logic. Public institutions are legally and socially obligated to deliver services consistently and equitably to every citizen in every circumstance without discrimination or interruption. Mr. Speaker, this mandate is undoubtedly incompatible with the experimental spirit that underpins creativity and innovation. When public sector institutions abandon experiential continuity in the pursuit of creative disruption, they introduce volatility into systems where volatility is not an acceptable cause of learning, not accepted at this time. Institutional instability in public service has a real and costly consequences. Let's look at a global example. In the UK, the National Health Services in 2002 embarked on an ambitious project to reform the healthcare system by modernizing it, and effectively they laid off all their most experienced staff who were frontline workers. By 2011, this innovative project was dismantled after costing 12 billion euros and failing to achieve its main objectives. The underlying reason, of course, for the extensive failure being the loss of institutional memory. Ultimately, stability in public institutions is essential because it protects public trust and ensures reliable delivery of critical services. Not accepted at this time. My final position here is that innovation cannot replace the human touch in the public service. Mr. Speaker, public institutions must prioritize institutional experience built through years of direct service, community engagement, and a contextual understanding, as this is irreplaceable in delivering meaningful public service. To enforce this belief, the GOJ, in fact, recently implemented a customer service policy, which is designed to improve public service delivery, in which institutional knowledge is a core driver. Research by Argo 2030 conveys that organizations improve with retained knowledge. In addition, the UNDP 2018 advised that a loss of institutional memory weakens governance and repeated policy failures. Members of the audience, public institutions serve real people. They do not chase profits. Mr. Speaker, those in society served by the public sector institutions are often the most vulnerable in society: the sick, the elderly, the displaced, the grieving, and the marginalized. When institutions replace accumulated human wisdom with creative, innovation-driven approaches such as automated service delivery or digital-first models, they often strip out the relational intelligence that make those services people-centered. When the accumulated wisdom of experienced practitioners is displaced by creative visions, it is not the institution that pays the price. It is the citizen at the counter, the patient in the waiting room, and the family in crisis. Public institutions have a moral obligation. That obligation demands not novelty, but proven relational human competence that only institutional experience can provide. As a Jamaican philosopher and statesman, the Honorable Norman Manley once framed, the strength of a nation lies not in the novelty of its ideas, but in the depth of its institutional wisdom. The opposition closes our advance by reaffirming that we are not anti-innovation, we are anti-recklessness. Thank you.
All right, and thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the second period of cross-examination. This segment is largely similar to the first segment. The only meaningful difference is that we'll ask proposition to pose their questions first.
Team opposition, do you understand that by implementing innovation and creativity, it means that the institutional experience must be erased?
We disagree with that statement. Particularly because you need institutional experience to first drive your innovation, as stated in our speech.
That's not the question I asked.
Are you finished with your answer? Yes. You can ask another question or a follow-up if you desire.
From what we have presented in our argument, have you concluded that we are saying that in order for us to be innovative and creative, we have to get rid of institutional experience?
You're asking if we are saying that you need to get rid of institutional experience? Absolutely not. We're saying that institutional experience is what you need in order to have meaningful innovation. You need to be guided by what currently exists so you can analyze and decide what needs to be done.
If institutional experience is the dominant factor as you have presented, how do you explain persistent findings from bodies like the Auditor General's Department on inefficiency and duplication?
One finding does not necessarily mean another thing is true. So because they're finding inefficiencies in some parts, that doesn't mean that they aren't finding data to back up that you need experience in other parts in order to correct these inefficiencies. Because you'd actually need a person who has experienced these inefficiencies to point them out.
All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the second period of cross-examination. At this point in time, the debate is going to pause. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. My sincerest apologies, Agro-Invest. You may now pose your 3 questions.
Team proposition, what would you say if not institutional experience should be the driving force for innovation and creativity? What should be used if not institutional experience?
We have been saying that institutional experience is the driver of innovation and creativity. We are saying that innovation and creativity must be prioritized with the support of the institutional experience, because what will guide innovation and creativity is what we have been doing, how it has been failing, and how we can improve it to make it better.
Team proposition, we'd also like to ask the question, in a world where software life cycles are so short, how do you see us managing or navigating the landscape of digital offerings without institutional experience?
Software lifespan being short is no excuse for us to remain stagnant, right? And if a software lifespan is short, then you just innovate and continue building on the foundation is already there, right? But that is no excuse for us to fear innovation and to fear creativity, because we have already proven that innovation and creativity are the primary drivers of change, positive change in the public sector.
Then we'd ask this final question. Say that you have already bought software A and now you'll need to procure software B. How do you now determine interoperations?
That is assuming that software A has failed, right? That is just an assumption. What we are saying is that whatever it is that it will cost for the public sector to operate efficiently, effectively, to ensure that the people of Jamaica are able to benefit in the very best ways possible, if that means prioritizing innovation and creativity, then that is the path we have.
All right. And now we conclude the second period of cross-examination. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had an engaging debate so far. These two remaining speakers are going to try to prove to the judges why their team should reign superior. And so we will give them a 1-minute prep time to conclude their reply speeches, after which we'll invite the opposition reply speaker, followed by the proposition reply speaker. Your 1-minute break starts now. Conclude this debate for Team Agro-Invest Corporation, we invite their reply speaker, Mickey Ruley.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thank the proposition for their performance today. It was creative and energetic. However, one might say their arguments showed us their lack in experience. My job today is simple. It is to separate what sounds good, like innovation, from what makes sense. My opponents have sought to force their understanding of the Moot upon us in their first speaker. While it would be beneficial to you if we chose to say that institutional experience alone is needed, the Moot clearly says favors, not one or the other. We believe that innovation under the guidance of experienced leadership and careful testing can be beneficial to the public. My opponent's first speaker mentioned an unpredictable future. However, where we are standing, this is exactly where institutional experience comes in handy. Over the years, through learned experience and tacit knowledge, one should be more than able to offer reliable suggestions on what is expected, and even further able to lend knowledge on what the best way is to handle said unpredicted future, based on trends that they would have observed over their many years, absorbing all there is to know in their field of expertise. Over the years, the Jamaican populace has been used as guinea pigs, throwing whatever innovation or new sensational nothing that would get people riled up or garner enough votes to maintain or overthrow a seat. Then as soon as the first issue arises or the first round of maintenance is needed, that is when we see persons running around like headless chickens, sourcing parts, or persons who are qualified to maintain it. We've all been victims of no water for long periods of time while the Water Commission sources a part for the new pump, or the workplaces where we have to wait months on ends for machines which were forced upon us solely in the name of innovation to be maintained, as the rooms that the talks went on about these improvements only included the young and bright, and sadly the users of the public services feel the effects of youthful exuberance. Innovation usually comes at a price. We've seen smarter phones with less free features, cars that come with monthly subscriptions. We've been duped into paying for service or features that were normally free in the name of innovation or creativity. Is that really an improvement or an advancement? Or is it another way for the big man to squeeze another penny from the poor and vulnerable under the guise of offering novel services, which were supposedly to improve our quality of life while continuing the torture wheel of capitalism? The points brought forward by my colleagues today opposing the moots can be summarized thusly. Institutional experience is the prerequisite for meaningful innovation. Public institutions thrive on stability, and last but not least, innovation cannot replace the human touch in the public service. All of these points come to form one common conclusion. Experience is the foundation, while innovation can be a useful tool. We are not here to blindly or boldly reject innovation. In fact, in our experience, it is never good to take a hard and fast stance on any issue without analyzing it and making an informed decision. But let's make it very clear, unfettered innovation and creativity are the main ingredients for chaos. But on a more grounded level, it serves as a means of exclusion for the older, less tech-savvy members of our society who make up almost 20% of the Jamaican populace. They would be disadvantaged at the quick-paced, fast-changing, innovation-driven environments which are being called for. Innovation depends on experienced systems adapting gradually. The users of public services aren't lab rats to be experimented upon, especially when public funds, resources, and more so their trust are at risk. These are issues that affect real people. This is why institutional experience matters and must be at the forefront. Experience means lessons learned from past successes and past mistakes. It means knowing how systems function under pressure. It means understanding legal procedures, ethical obligations, budgeting realities, and community needs. These are not things that can simply be replaced by enthusiasm or creativity. While it sounds good to promise the public the latest, most cutting-edge technology to bring us into the future, the proposition second speaker boldly claimed that Jamaica cannot survive on memory. Let us take a step back and remember that a people without the knowledge of their past origin and culture is like a tree without roots. And like a tree without roots, its foundation, it will wither away as soon as the heat turns up. The proposition took us on a ride discussing why innovation and creativity should be at the forefront of the public sector institutions. Sadly, none of them would survive without an experienced driver. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to conclude this debate for Team Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, we invite their final speaker, Clayton Williams.
Mr. Speaker, honorable adjudicators, or worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Mr. Speaker, Team Opposition was given the burden of proving to us that institutional experience is sufficient to deliver meaningful improvement in the public sector, even in a rapidly changing environment. However, they have not been convincing enough. Team Opposition has attempted to convince this House that institutional experience should remain the guiding force of Jamaica's public sector. But we proved that while experience has value, it cannot be priority in a rapidly changing society.
We have clearly demonstrated that innovation and creativity must lead, while institutional experience supports. We are not suggesting erasing institutional memory. Mr. Speaker, in examining the major clashes of the debate, we have clash number one, stability versus progress. The team opposition's strongest argument is that institutional experience provides stability and improves public trust. But Mr. Speaker, stability without progress will become stagnation. They would want us to believe that because something existed for a long time, it must be reliable. But outdated systems will not become effective simply because of familiarity. Our first speaker clearly showed that Jamaica's public sector continues to suffer from duplication, weak coordination, fragmented policy implementation, and inefficiencies. These are not signs of a system that only needs more experience, but a system that needs transformation. Experience maintains the system, but innovation is what improves the system. This is why this clash falls to team proposition. The second clash, risk versus results. Team opposition may argue that innovation is risky. They may say that prioritizing creativity can lead to disruption, poor decision, or consequences and gambling of the citizens' lives. But Mr. Speaker, we ask, isn't it riskier to continue with the system that are already failing? The cost of innovating is not imaginary, it is visible. Our speaker gave examples such as PICA, TAJ's service platforms, JCF's electronic traffic systems, and the court administration digital systems and virtual hearings, all proving that innovation is not reckless. Innovation is practical. Innovation is already working. The opposition has warned us about the risk of change, but they have failed to address the greater risk of remaining the same. The third and final clash is between experience alone versus innovation supported by experience. Team opposition suggested that if we prioritize innovation, we will be rejecting institutional experience. However, from the beginning, our argument is that experience must not be prioritized when it is no longer sufficient. Experience should guide. Experience should inform. Experience should support. But it should not block creativity. It should not delay reform. It should not become an excuse for inefficiency. Institutional experience is useful when it evolves. But when experience becomes resistance to change, it becomes a barrier to national development. So why have we won the debate? Mr. Speaker, when the debate is weighed, team proposition wins on three grounds, which I call REF. Relevance, evidence, and future thinking. We have provided the relevance of innovation, we have shown the evidence, and we have also shown future thinking. Team opposition looks backward for answers, while team proposition looks forward for solutions. Mr. Speaker, systems that only value experience will repeat itself, but a system that prioritizes innovation and creativity will transform itself. In closing, we would like to thank Agro-Investment for assisting us to prove our point today. Agro-Investment Corporation was not just merely created by preserving old systems, but by rethinking, restructuring, and repurposing them to respond to Jamaica's changing agricultural and investment needs. So today, we thank you for being a living testimony that innovation and creativity is not the enemy of experience. It is what gives experience new life, new purpose, and new relevance. Congratulations, your future is bright. Jamaica's future looks very promising. I thank you.
Right, let's have a round of applause for the teams one more time. Could we have some order in the room, please? We know you like the excitement, but we need to bring the match to a pause to allow the judges to deliberate. For those of you who may have just joined us, you witness part, hopefully at least a little piece, of an interesting matchup between the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs and Agro-Investment Corporation debating the Moot, be it resolved that public sector institutions should favor innovation and creativity over institutional knowledge. Thank you very much, teams, for a very spirited debate. At this point, the judges will now deliberate, and we will use the time to refresh ourselves, and they will return to sum up the match and announce the winner of today's match. See you in a few.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed the second match in this room of the 2026 staging of the public sector debate competition. The moot in front of us asks the question, which one should the public sector favor? Innovation and creativity or institutional experience? So what did we get from the debate? Well, the debate was interesting in a particular way. What the judges found quite humorous in a way is that both teams had a burden and then accused the other team of not fulfilling that burden while simultaneously doing the same. What do I mean by that? So we heard from Team Proposition, Ministry of Justice, that quite frankly, we're not abandoning institutional experience. We're simply using it as a vehicle to aid in creativity, and wherever that institutional experience comes at the expense of national development, then we're going to prioritize creativity. So it's not an abandonment of institutional experience. We need institutional experience. It has value, but that value is comparatively lesser to innovation and creativity. That's the burden. We hear on Team Opposition, so a little bit later down in the debate, that we're not abandoning creativity, right? We see the value of innovation and creativity, but institutional experience is greater and has more value, and therefore that is what we're going to be advocating for. That's the burden. But then somewhere in the debate, we got this idea that how can you possibly have innovation without institutional experience? And how can you possibly have innovation and creativity without institutional experience, and vice versa? And then we saw both teams who accurately identified the burdens of the debate, thrusting a burden that is not applicable to debate on each other, while simultaneously accepting that burden and not accepting that burden. It was really interesting. So then, how did the debate then mechanize when we go through all of that? Well, we understand from Team Proposition that the issue is that institutional experience limits productivity, and that's particularly bad. It causes a lack of inefficiencies in government systems, and that's bad. And it gives us examples, for example, like PICA and how PICA digitalized, about eGov and how eGov helped the TAJ, the police ticketing system, that kind of thing, the court system. Several examples and appreciations of how innovation and creativity help to solve problems that exist in status quo. And that institutional experience, by rather explicitly, is a barrier to that. Now, we wanted to know how exactly it is that it is the this institutional experience that is causing the lack of this creativity. We think that's like a big burden that you needed to have proved, and we didn't fully appreciate that. We appreciate that creativity created these things, but we don't see exactly how it was that institutional experience limited these things. There are certain pieces of information that could have definitely helped with that. I'll leave you to do the research or come to me after the fact to see how that could have been done better. Right? But with that said, we still credit to a great extent that we get some sort of innovation. Now, what do we get from Team Opposition? Right? Well, the first speaker from Team Opposition comes to us and gives us a quite extremist case that what's going to happen in Prop's world is that they're going to completely dismantle the public sector and all of the legacy institutions that exist within it, and we're going to start over from scratch and just go creative. That's a tad bit extremist, and I don't think that was like what Prop was saying, right? But then we move past that and we get into what the actual meat and potatoes of the debate was, which is that innovation needs structure and direction, and that can only come through innovative institutional experience. We think that's an interesting idea. What the judges really loved, though, was Donovan Leon's substantive, his appreciation and analysis that government is a bad actor to be prioritizing innovation and creativity, because government necessarily has a mandate to help the poor, to ensure that national security is protected, social development, and the consequences of failing as a result of pushing innovation and creativity to the boundaries are catastrophic for government. Private sector is a better actor for doing that kind of appreciation. We thought that was really interesting. But when we weighed that substantive against the substantive that comes out from the Team Proposition, we realized that the debate was a lot closer than one might think. And so, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of deliberation, tallying all the scores, the results from the cross-examination, the results of this match, we'll see one team with 3 points, the another with 1. The team that advances to preliminary round 2 with a total of 3 points and 286 cumulative speaker points, quite an impressive score, is the team from the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. We found the consistent analysis of arguments to be compelling on your side, whereas on team opposition, we thought there needed to be a little more consistency in the case. I'd like to take the opportunity to commend the second speaker from team opposition, Donovan Leon. The panel was split as to whether you were the best debater or not, but ultimately the majority of the panel thought that the best debater of this match was the first speaker from proposition. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs ending on 286 cumulative speaker points to Agro-Invest Corporation's 278 points, a high scoring match. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll see you a bit for match 3.